the head coach. I don't feel he's ever made a success of being a head coach in rugby league. He'd made a real success of himself as head coach at Leeds Carnegie in Union, and he'd done admirably as a assistant to various people in rugby league. But for me, he was never head coach material. And as much as he was a good appointment for the Bulls in terms of it appeased the fans, and the fans loved Jimmy Lowes, there's a big difference between James Lowes, the rugby league footballer, and James Lowes, the head coach of Bradford Bulls. And I think he's done the right thing. He's resigned. He's gone before he's needed to be pushed, which again is testament to the character of the man. And it weren't through lack of trying on James Lowes' behalf. He's Bradford through and through, and he's one of my top 3 favourite ever Bulls players. So,
yeah,
real shame to see it go so poorly for him, because it would have been wonderful for it to work. But bigger picture, the club needs to be guided and developed in a better way. So hopefully the next appointment will facilitate that.
Obviously that can't be Diskin, but the front runners are 2 other former Bulls players. So Glenn Morrison from Dewsbury and Scott Naylor at Oldham, the names being linked most prominently.
If I was given my preference out of those 2, I'd prefer Glenn Morrison. I think he's got more coaching pedigree at the moment, and I think he's probably done as much as he can do with Dewsbury, and he has real affection for the Bulls. So I would, out of those 2, choose Glenn Morrison. Not to say that Scott Naylor's not doing a great job at Oldham, because he's doing phenomenally well, but I think experience and just general coaching now, so I would tend to prefer Morrison.
Fair enough.
So
what's next?
Moving on, yes. Widnes coach Dennis Betts has revealed that the Vikings could be without forward Alex Gerrard for the rest of the season. The 24-year-old has been struggling with a knee problem, and Betts fears that a season-ending operation could be the player's only option when it comes to resolving the issue.
Certainly going on all those flights across the Atlantic and back
to and from LA
to see her husband is probably not the best way to deal with a serious injury.
And let's be fair, she's a good-looking lass.
Well,
so
she puts a lot of effort into when she does play as well. Like, her tackle numbers are always up there, aren't they?
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not season-ending for Alex, because it's one of those. It's one of those positive stories, isn't it, the Alex Gerrard story, in terms of how long it's sort of taken for him to get his chance at the top level. And even then, he doesn't ever seem to be nailed on in this Widnes side.
He has to work.
Yeah, whenever he plays, he just works his arse off for his teammates.
Machine, isn't he? Yeah, absolutely. He's, so often we've seen him in the stats roundup for like 40 plus tackles.
Yeah.
So let's hope he comes out of that well. Some Wakefield news now. Then Wakefield forward Chris Anakin has signed an extension to his contract that ties him to the club until the end of 2017. Anakin is a product of the Wakefield Wildcats Academy and has signed a 1-year extension to this contract. Wakefield also confirmed that French international forward Mikhail Simon has signed a 1-year extension to his current contract at the club. The deal also includes the option of a further year, which could potentially keep the prop at the club until the end of 2018. And today it was also announced that Bill Tupu, the centre, has signed a contract extension with the Wakefield Wildcats, I believe, to the end of 2018.
Yeah, I mean, all reasonable bits of business. Mikhail Simon's the one that stands out the most for me. I mean, Bill Tupu has hardly played through injury, and Anakin has been in and out, and he has games where he looks like he could break it, and then he has games where you just sort of is almost invisible sort of thing. Maybe he just doesn't get enough minutes in some games, and in other games he explodes onto the scene. But Mikhail Simon's had a really strong last month or two, and he seems to have got his head down and he's doing well.
It's a positive indicator that Trin are getting their business done early in terms of squad retention as well, and that people want to stay and play at Wakefield, which is probably a marker of Chris Chester's impact at the club.
It's a big difference to a year ago when they really didn't know what the squad would be looking like, and probably 2 years ago as well when they had the financial troubles the year before that as well. So it's been a long time coming for Wakefield to start setting up a squad in advance, and you're starting to feel like that squad will stay together somewhat.
It's encouraging signs. Okay, Hull FC skipper Gareth Ellis has agreed to a 1-year contract extension, which keeps him at the club until the end of 2017.
Also accepted a 1-game ban for his reckless striking on the weekend.
Fair enough. Young half Jordan Johnston has signed a new 2-year deal with the Widnes Vikings. Johnston only joined the Super League club from the Cumbria Storm Under-19 Regional Academy in October. He has previously played some games in the Championship for Whitehaven.
Yeah, looks a good prospect. He played a game at hooker, I think, in his debut. came off the bench, and it was on it was a TV game, so I'm going to guess it was the Hull FC game where he seemed pretty lively. So it's nice to see Widnes promoting some of their own. Well, obviously, it's not their own youth in terms of he came through a different academy, but he's made his way at that
promoting
side.
Youth,
it's good to see that, yeah.
See the cream flowing to the top. Okay. Bradford hooker Adam O'Brien, who's a friend of the podcast, has extended his contract with the Bulls until the end of 2019. I'm over the moon to have signed until the end of 2019, O'Brien said. It gives me a bit of security and a target to get Bradford back into Super League. It's really good for me, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of being at the club for another 3 years. I came through the youth system and went into the first team, but never really planned my future. Now I've got my first team spot, and I've become a regular in the side. Plus, I'm one of the longest serving players now. To continue my stay at the club with an extension is brilliant, and I'm over the moon about it. The only thing now is to focus on the rest of the year and push on towards returning to Super League.
So
this is better. This was better news for me than the sad departure of Jimmy Lowe's. Adam O'Brien's a player I really rate, and I think is certainly a Super League player in waiting, if not in terms of his current quality. I think he could hold his own in Super League even now.
A future club captain, maybe.
With any luck, yeah.
He seems to have a good head on him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And determined to succeed and determined to do that with the Bradford Bulls. Obviously, now that he's signed this new deal.
Well, you consider the people that have coached him over the last few years as well. Matt Diskin, Jimmy Lowes. He's learned from some good hookers. He's been around Heath Strange, people like that. So he's had a good upbringing in terms of becoming a hooker, and he's learned from a lot of different styles of hooker as well. So hopefully, it's fantastic news. Castleford Tigers this week have announced that they've signed Huddersfield forward Larm Patrick on loan until the end of the season. Patrick, who's 27, spent last term on loan at Wigan and has made 10 Super League appearances for the Giants this year. Tigers coach Darryl Powell said he's a good player and he's highly rated in the game.
It's a bit of a strange one for me, this. Huddersfield, bottom of the table, thin squad, lot lacking in the pack. Yeah, they let a player go because he won't sign a long-term deal that suits them.
So the question I have to ask is, what were the reasons behind him joining Wigan on loan a year ago? Does that tell you something about his happiness at Huddersfield?
I think the Wigan situation was Wigan wanted the player.
Right.
Wigan possibly were hoping that they could keep the player long-term without having to pay a transfer fee, but Huddersfield were not going to budge on that.
Okay.
So therefore they went for a player who they didn't have to pay for, like Willie Isa, to do the same role effectively in the side, and promote a couple more younger players.
Okay.
So he's ended up in a position having to renegotiate his deal with Huddersfield, and that's not obviously seen eye to eye with the two sides. So maybe there's some animosity there,
possibly
in terms of all of that. I mean, his happiness to go and play for Wigan, his reluctance to sign a deal. Well, not reluctance. He's, from the sounds of what the Giants have come out and said, he basically wouldn't accept a deal that they wanted him to accept for their own cap position. Mm-hmm. So and it sounds like Castleford will be looking to keep him for a couple of years after the end of this season, but nothing's been announced, obviously, on that regard yet, but we'll see how that goes.
Yes, okay. And finally, Toronto is set to have a club in the English Domestic Rugby League, with former Great Britain coach Brian Noble taking charge of the Canadian side. The plans, which have been 2 years in the making, will be unveiled in Toronto and linked by video to the Centre for Canadian Studies at the University of Leeds on Wednesday. The proposals would see a Toronto-based side enter League One in 2017. That's the year that Richard in his testimonial. Interestingly enough, Noble will be confirmed as the new club's director of rugby, with ex-Leigh boss Paul Rowley becoming the first head coach. The project, which is the brainchild of Canadian entrepreneur Eric Perez, has the official backing of the Rugby Football League and has received overwhelming support from the clubs. The first Canadian transatlantic pro sports team is expected to play its home games at Lamport Stadium in blocks of 3 and 4 and then go on the road for similar lengths of time in the UK. It's thought the team will initially be based in England and draw on players currently from the Championship and League One, but long term the aim will be to use players from the Canadian domestic competition, and it could even become a stepping stone for a team in the United States to follow suit. The Canadians say they regularly attract crowds of 7,000 for international matches at Lamport Stadium. So if they're averaging 7,000 as a League One side, that's
you would expect
that's the best attended side outside of Super League.
You would expect that they wouldn't average those sorts of crowds at that sort of level. It's an interesting one. It's one it's one I see both sides of the story on, and to be honest, it's expansion that I don't know if anyone's ready for. It's unprecedented expansion. Sometimes the Rugby Football League wants to grab headlines with these kind of out there moves. You know, you just look at things like moving a sport to a different part of the year. You look at things like the new structure that was brought in. Lots of, and you go all the way back to breaking away from another sport.
But I think these things are in rugby league's DNA, and I'm quite excited by it, to be honest with you. Everything you said, all the changes. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's not a massive departure from the idea that's circulating in the NFL at the moment about basing a team in the UK in London. I know it's an economy. There's a scale.
We're talking about two totally different things here, because the NFL side, there's a lot more money there than there is in League One.
But what I'm saying is, it's not an unheard of concept, is it? And it's not something that hasn't got a certain amount of traction in other sports. So, and if this guy Perez is prepared to fund it, and the RFL will do a certain amount of due diligence, I'm sure, into his long-term viability as an owner, then if it's not coming out of anyone's pocket, let them do it. Let's have a go. Let's try it. And if they fold in 2 or 3 years, then the people who don't like it now will be able to say, we told you so. But if it works, then this is a really exciting thing.
I agree with that aspect of it, definitely. On Love Rugby League, there's a very scathing verdict of whether this should go ahead or not, and I'm inclined to agree with a lot of the points that they made about would it not have been more sensible to encourage the development within our own area where there's lots of places that we could expand to or push expansion more, and all similarly, how much has the expansion the RFL's been involved with so far actually borne any sort of positivity or anything like that. I mean, you could argue that the game in France hasn't really moved on. I think you're starting to see more in that arena. Maybe not in the international side yet, but the Catalan Dragons this year are a legitimate contender, and they have had a Challenge Cup final appearance in the past.
And this is
Toulouse
with a lot of French players.
Toulouse are clearly a good story, a good news story for this year. My concern is, this side will come into League One. If they do a year in League One and it doesn't work out and they disappear, and it's not cost anyone in this country in our game any money for this to have happened, then that's not really a problem. But what if they progress into the Championship, they're in the Championship for a few years and don't go further than that, and then they decide to pull the plug? That puts more question marks over where other clubs fit in that league. If they get into the Championship or even the Super League and it pushes out a side like a Wakefield, a Castleford, a Hull KR, a Salford, where does that leave those clubs if then this venture were to fail or be an amazing success? And what it actually meant is you got a North American professional league and they no longer needed to play in our league. You'd lose that team, but have you already done too much damage? The damage that you see at clubs like Bradford, who had their lowest league attendance since time began this weekend, or last weekend, and teams like Halifax, who've had endless financial issues and squabbles over ground shares and that sort of stuff. Teams like Workington, who have basically become a provincial club that can't grow really, unfortunately, anymore from their time. A team like Oldham, who don't have any home to call their own.
And these are all legitimate problems that would still exist.
And do you want to force that problem onto another Super League side, like a Castleford, like a Wakefield, like a Hull KR, like a Salford?
I think you're looking very far. First of all, I think you're looking very far into the future. Although I do take your points, they are salient, but they all exist, irrespective of whether or not there's a team in Toronto that comes over and plays. Everything that you've just said to me is still a potential problem, or a problem that exists today. If Wakefield drop out of the Super League, that raises serious questions about their continued existence as a rugby league club, regardless of there being a Toronto side. Oldham still wouldn't have a ground. All these things still exist. So I don't think that's a reason to not try something. But it does need to be, I'll agree with you that it does need to be managed in the correct way. And that's not something I'm necessarily sure we've always been capable of doing. Is managing these things. We do tend to trip ourselves up. We've got these brilliant, lofty ideas for the sport, and then the execution is all a little bit provincial rather than international. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully it works out well, and good luck to, and look, they've certainly got two very experienced people at the helm.
Yeah, one of the players who's reportedly